Read bits. What screams, this couple isn't going to last long? My first time in Mexico City, I didn't realize what a bad neighborhood my hotel was in. I had just stepped out of the hotel and 3 men noticed me and started walking right over to me really fast and surrounded me on 3 sides. I literally jumped into what turned out to be a tiny bookstore because I sensed I was about to be grabbed. The only people working in there were 2 young girls, maybe 8 and 9. One of the guys followed me and stayed right next to me, blocking my exit. And then, as if by magic, a door I hadn't even noticed in the back of the store opened, and an adult male, probably the girl's dad, emerged. The man left the store, and after lingering a few more minutes and buying some books out of gratitude for him probably saving my life, I went back to the hotel. That must have been terrifying. Glad the dad walked out and the bad guys left. It was. My Spanish is barely conversational, and I was so nervous I couldn't even think of the words I'd need to explain my situation to the bookstore owner. So it was lucky for me that the guy just left. I stopped at a Love's off the interstate really late one night to get gas. At the time I was 17 and heading home from work. The gas station was pretty much empty, no other cars at the pump or anything. I went in, paid for my gas, and came back out to start pumping it. I noticed a guy standing behind one of the pumps on the other side looking at me, and it gave me the creeps, so I decided I'd just get back in my vehicle while the pump was going with the doors locked. Once I was in my truck, he came jogging over, motioning for me to roll my window down, and I just shook my head no. He tried to yank open my door and then started banging on the windows. I called the store and one of the employees came out and told the guy the cops were on the way. The guy took off running and the employee told me to stay in my truck and he just pulled the pump out for me and told me to be safe on my way. I no longer stop at gas stations at night if it can be helped at all, and if I do, I pick a busy one that's well lit. It still gives me the creeps, and I fully believe the guy either wanted to harm me, steal my truck, or both. This reminds me of something that happened about 4 or 5 months ago. I was coming home from somewhere around 9:30 p.m. and needed gas. I wasn't far from home, and this was the typical gas station I used, but always during the day. It's in a pretty safe part of town, but I was debating because everyone knows gas stations can be sketchy at night. Anyway, I finally decided it's probably fine because it wasn't so late. It's on a fairly busy street with some businesses and houses, apartments. As it turned out, the whole area was deserted, which surprised me. The only other person at the pumps was an older guy, maybe in his 40s with blue hair. He was next to his vehicle, an older model minivan. It appeared he was filling his tank. All of a sudden, a car came from down the street and a younger guy starts yelling out his window, "I need a witness!" several times while pulling into the gas station. It seemed he was focused on me. Luckily, I was almost done and just ignored him. He did stop but drove around the gas station a couple of times before finally driving off. I got back into my car. The guy had rattled me and I was so relieved he drove off. But the nutty thing was, the blue-haired guy was still there, filling up his minivan. He definitely should have been done by the time I was ready to leave because he was already there when I pulled up. So either he was pretending to be there to keep me safe, or maybe was a guardian angel. I like the latter. Walking home late one night in a large town, not a soul was out. No cars either. I heard feet running up from directly behind me quickly and quietly. My instincts took over and I turned around and talked to the guy as if I knew him. I giggled and told him he scared the shit out of me. I think I caught him off guard because he stopped running and looked confused. He started chatting with me, obviously was on drugs, and told me he was a carny in town for the fair. He bummed a cigarette off of me and left. Pretty sure he had something unpleasant planned for me, but surprised him with my lack of fear. What an incredibly skillful way to manipulate the situation. Whoa, I wouldn't have been able to think on my feet that fast. Well done. I was walking my dog at 2 a.m. after work. I walked outside the gated community and this huge man covered in tattoos and only wearing jean shorts walked up to me. I started crying because I was scared, but he started apologizing for scaring me. Turns out he was walking his dog off leash and wanted to warn me about walking alone in a gang area. He lived in same apartment community. His wife and him always made sure I made it home because I was working nights. I did something similar on the L train in Chicago some years back. Guy in our train car started acting really erratically in a threatening or drug-induced way. Someone tried to leave to go to another train car, and that set him off even further. And then he got in my face a bit. I'm a woman, was in my 20s then, and would definitely have lost in a physical fight. Scary dude was wearing a very distinctive-looking winter coat, so in my attempt to get him to calm down, I started talking about how much I liked his coat and asking him where he got it from. Somehow this worked. He calmed way down and started telling me about his coat. That coat was actually ugly as fuck, but I really didn't want to get stabbed, so I'm glad this tactic worked. leaving the hospital late at night in a sketchy area. Approaching my car, some dude appeared out of nowhere walking towards me and calling out. I stopped and said, "What's up?" The guy had ripped pants on and nothing else, very dirty with longer hair sticking out at all angles with bulging eyes. He asked, "Is it a good idea to give out your bank PIN number?" I replied, "Yeah, give me yours." He looked alarmed and said loudly, "No," then suddenly took off at full sprint. As he ran, I could hear him huffing and slobbering, trying to go like the Flash. As a teen, I worked a part-time job after school. If I left work exactly at 11 p.m., I could make the last bus of the night around 11:04 that made my commute a bit easier. If I got out a bit late and missed that bus, I'd have to walk about a mile down this creepy street that was one half residential with big houses tucked back about 200 feet behind trees, and the other side of the street, a large old church. There was a median strip in road. I normally would walk on the church side, and at night, all the statues looked creepy. I always had a thought of some random killer hopping out from behind the bushes. One night, I was walking and got this eerie feeling to walk down the median strip, but ignored it because I figured I'd look like a creep or suspicious. I walked down the church side, glance over at the creepy statues, and kind of laugh like I'm tripping and continue walking. Like 5 seconds later, a balding, chubby guy in a wife beater and shorts jumped out from the bushes, sweating profusely, looked at me, then stared at the ground and started huffing, puffing, and chuckling. I ran and he just stayed there when I looked back. I'm guessing he eventually moved somewhere else, but I was legit terrified. He had his arms down to his side, hands balled into a fist, and was shrugging his shoulders with every huff and puff. I never let my job keep me late again after that. It was against the law too in the first place. When I was 16 EO, I worked at a fast food place with this manager who seemed to delight in making me miss the last bus home, so I'd be forced to walk through a very bad neighborhood in the dark to get home. She did it to everyone. Waited until near the end of your scheduled shift to assign what she called a going home job, which guaranteed you wouldn't make it out on time. Eventually, my dad called from out of state, and I'm not sure exactly what was said to the manager, but I gather it was clearly spelled out that they would not go without consequences when I eventually got attacked. Just a matter of time if they kept keeping me late. I had to walk by a halfway house full of recently released prisoners. Guys would lean out their windows to hoot and ask my price. Suddenly, I was out the door on time like clockwork, and everybody wanted to know why I wasn't getting going home jobs anymore, which eventually got the practice banned by the top manager. Not the most terrifying or inexplicable, but one that still haunts me. I was 15 on a trip to see my dad in Europe. In a train station in France, I smelled something pretty terrible. I looked around and saw a man who was incontinently drunk, sitting in a pool of his own waste, both kinds. Holding a bottle, he looked utterly defeated and miserable, named Seats. He saw me looking at him and he looked back at me. That look has haunted me for 40 years. At 12 years old, I was stalked by a grown man while living on Kadena AFB in Okinawa in the 80s. He would call me from off base and couldn't be tracked by the MPs. He would say frightening sexual things to me. My parents would disconnect the phone, but I always wonder why we couldn't get a new number. I think about this whenever this memory comes up. I thought he knew where I lived because he would say things that made me think he was watching me. He was also doing this to 2 other girls my age. Back then, we were listed in the Stars and Stripes newspaper as babysitters, and that's how he got our info. I can't quite recall how it wrapped up, but I believe he was eventually caught. It was a long time ago, but a terrifying year of my life. Following a boys' night out, I was waiting for a taxi home. A stranger comes and starts chatting to me and asked which direction I'm going. Says he's going the same way and offers to share a taxi. During the ride, he keeps asking about my night out and acting skeptical like he didn't believe me about anything. Kept saying the pubs I claimed I was at had closed ages ago and disputing that if I'd been out with friends, why I was alone now. It seemed unnecessarily standoffish for a taxi ride. When I got home, he got out the taxi and asked if he could come in my house. I told him no because I had family inside, but again, he didn't believe me and kept insisting I was lying. I let myself in, said goodbye, and closed the door in his face. He'd already started to show anger. The guy stood outside my house staring at the windows for a considerable length of time. And that's it. Thanks for watching. What's the scariest encounter you've ever had with a stranger? Write in the comments.